The Los Angeles Chargers, in their first season under head coach Brandon Staley, went 9-8. Now, I was pretty surprised that the Chargers were not able to make it into the playoffs, because when Brandon Staley first got hired, this wasn't supposed to be a 2 or 3 year rebuild. Like, Brandon Staley, when he was first hired by the Chargers, most of us looked at it as a situation that was win now, because you already have your franchise quarterback set in place and Justin Herbert, which he was a Pro Bowler this year, so he played really well. The defense had, some talented pieces there. You had Derwin James, you had Joey Bosa, you had Kenneth Murray. So you look at the job that Brandon Staley did as the defensive coordinator for the LA Rams. He took their defense from being average to elite and under the span of 1 year. So you look at the talent that the Chargers had defensively, myself and other Chargers fans thought that the Chargers defense would end up being one of the best defenses in the league, and that the Chargers overall would be a team that, wouldn't be the best team in the AFC, but they would be a team that could get into the postseason and kind of have a similar run that Cincinnati had in the postseason this year. However, that didn't happen because the Chargers didn't make it into the playoffs. And the reason for this was because they were super inconsistent this year, which is why I think it's fair to consider Brandon Staley's first year as head coach for Los Angeles to be a disappointment, because the Chargers' expectations going into the year for their fans were playoffs. I don't think there were too many Chargers fans before the season who felt like their team wasn't good enough to make it into the playoffs this year. And you had the talent to do so. You just weren't really able to execute in the games that you needed to win. And when you look at that loss against the Houston Texans, that probably was one of the most surprising losses of the whole entire year, because that was a game that I thought was a give me for the Chargers. And even after losing that game, the final game of the regular season, when they had to play the Las Vegas Raiders in a win or go home situation, all they had to do was defeat a Raiders team that, was playing some really good football. But the Chargers were a more talented football team. And with everything that the Raiders had to endure this past season, with their head coach having to step down, the whole Henry Ruggs debacle, having the interim head coach, the Raiders were kind of put in a unfortunate situation. And you thought that the Chargers would be able to capitalize off that, and they weren't. So what is the state of the franchise moving forward for Los Angeles? Well, you are second right now in available cap space heading into free agency. The Chargers right now have somewhere around $57 million and some change. So that's enough to be able to sign 2-3 impact players. Okay? Now, you do have some work that could be done to the offensive line. Right guard Michael Scofield, as of right now, is expected to hit free agency because he doesn't have a new contract with Los Angeles. We don't know if the Chargers are going to resign him or not. Then you got the tight end position, which outside of Donald Parham, you don't really have anybody else. Jared Cook's getting up there in age. He also is a free agent. So you have to get younger when it comes to the tight end room, and you got to improve that. And you need to add some more depth on the interior of your defensive line, because Linval Joseph is getting up there in age, and Justin Jones is going to be a free agent. Now, if the Chargers wanted to keep any of their upcoming pending free agents, they definitely have the money to do so, especially when it comes to wide receiver Mike Williams. Now, Mike Williams isn't a household name. However, he is a really good wide receiver. And if Mike Williams ends up leaving Los Angeles and signing with the right team, he can end up being a top 10 wide receiver because he's a really good contested jump ball wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver who you are going to see do a lot with the ball in his hands. He's not really going to make a lot of people miss after the catch. He's one of those guys who is a really good 50-50 ball threat who you pretty much just throw the ball up to in single coverage and he goes up and gets it. He also could be a really good red zone target. So if Mike Williams lands with the right team, he could be a really good snag in free agency. However, I think that he is going to demand a pretty reasonable salary. So if you're the Chargers, you got to be looking at it like this, okay? Like there are a lot of talented wide receivers coming out in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft. And also, you have enough money that you potentially could upgrade from Mike Williams. So, the money that you potentially could pay Mike Williams, you can use that money and pay a guy like maybe a Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin. And although those guys are going to demand a little bit more money than what Mike Williams is going to demand, you could upgrade. Also, for the Chargers, you could bring in another good pass rusher to pair alongside of Joey Bosa. Like, with the money that the Chargers have to spend, there's really no reason why this team can't go from missing the playoffs to being a Super Bowl contender by the end of the offseason. Okay? And on top of that, the Chargers have some really great young building blocks to build around for the next 7 to 8 years. And I'm not talking about Justin Herbert because we already know how great he is. I'm talking about guys like Asante Samuel Jr., Rashawn Slater. Like, those two guys played phenomenal as rookies. As a matter of fact, they were probably two of the best rookies at their positions from this past season. So you definitely have some key players to build around with. Okay, and then you got Duran, you got Joey Bosa there. So now all you really need is to sign 2-3 more high-profile players, and you should definitely be in that Super Bowl conversation. However, you also have to look at the rest of the AFC West because the AFC West is going to be a really interesting division to watch for the next 3 to 4 years because you have Kansas City there with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid still there. We know that they're definitely going to be a factor. You got the Denver Broncos, who many people believe are a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. Then you have the Raiders with Josh McDaniels. They hire him, bring in general manager Dave Ziegler. And on top of that, they already made the postseason this past season. So Raiders fans probably going to think, okay, now with the fact that we have a legit coaching staff, not working for interim head coach, you know, we should be a better team going into this season than we were last season with everything that we had to deal with. So the AFC West is a really tight division. And we know that the Chiefs are the best team in that division, but the rest of the teams in the AFC West, you know, like, you kind of can say they're neck and neck. Like, the Chargers have the quarterback that, you know, everybody wants. Everybody wants to have a Justin Herbert, a elite quarterback with a great arm that can make plays. However, the Raiders don't really have that. But you do have Derek Carr, which he's not bad. He played really good. As a matter of fact, Derek Carr, you probably could say, was a top 12 quarterback this past season. However, for the Chargers, you definitely are lacking when it comes to what you need on the defensive side of the football, because you could probably make the argument and say that the Raiders, Broncos, and Chiefs are ahead of the Chargers when it comes to defense. So they have to be able to improve that defense. And when you're playing in a division with quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and whoever Denver is going to bring in, like, you have to be able to slow down these great offenses. That's the name of the game. So for the Chargers, you know, are they going to be able to add the necessary pieces defensively? Are they even going to be aggressive in free agency? Because just because a team has a lot of cap space doesn't mean they're going to use it all. doesn't mean they're going to be aggressive. Like, we've seen plenty of instances where teams have had a lot of cap space going into free agency and they don't really sign anybody and they don't really use it all that much. So you guys let me know what you guys think about the state of the franchise for the Los Angeles Chargers moving forward is. Are you high on the LA Chargers, or do you think that Brandon Staley may not be as good as a head coach that we expected he might be? Let me know down in the comment section down below if you are listening to this on YouTube. Also, make sure to check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms.